K-pop groups without Korean members seems like a new trend, as K-pop idol groups are not confined to just one or two foreign members anymore. There are even groups that are almost entirely composed of foreign nationals, and they're increasingly successful in the global K-pop industry. This change is demonstrating how K-pop is not just pop music done by Koreans, but a genre of its own. Let's delve deeper into K-pop localization with Claire Marie Lim, music technologist, artist, and faculty member at Berklee College of Music. Hello, Claire.
Hello, Claire.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us again. Now, Claire, let's begin by explaining the term K-pop localization and some background on how multinational K-pop groups were born.
Yeah, sure. So in general, localization as a term, when we usually use it, it refers to how something is customized to meet the specific needs of a market or locale. And that could be related to a number of factors like local language, culture, other kinds of societal standards. And in this case, that something that is customized is K-pop, and even more specifically, K-pop groups. So what we're really discussing with K-pop localization is how K-pop as a phenomenon has been so strategically adapted to international audiences in different regions. And one of the ways that this has been done is through these groups that you've mentioned. So we have non-Korean members in K-pop groups who have trained under K-pop systems. So therefore, they still are tied to the K-pop music industry in some way. And I think the birth of these groups was very much driven by the worldwide popularity of K-pop and the Korean wave in general, as well as entertainment agencies recognizing the potential to expand the international markets with localized talent.
Right, so let's talk a bit about some of the groups that fit into this category and that we should keep an eye out for. The one that comes up into my mind is Katseye, for instance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Katseye was the main one at the top of my head as well. And yeah, so maybe starting with Katseye, they're a girl group that's based in Los Angeles in the United States. And they were formed as a collaboration between Hybe Entertainment and Geffen Records. Another group that comes to mind is dearALICE, and they're under SM Entertainment, up and coming British boy band, but still produced under the Korean system. And kind of, flipping things a little bit, going in reverse, I think a good example, too, of a group that has had a lot of success in Korea, but is from outside of Korea, is XG. So they are a girl group that was formed in Japan by Avex, which is a Japanese entertainment company, but they operate within Korea, and they do the Korean promotional cycles, very similar to a lot of other Korean artists. And they also primarily sing in English, which I think is really interesting because that's opened up a lot of other opportunities for them too with international audiences. So groups like these truly exemplify how K-pop's characteristics can be applied to many diverse lineups while still maintaining that unique kind of K-pop flavor and appeal that really catches a lot of audiences' attentions.
I couldn't be happier to talk to you because this is sort of been a question that has been on my mind for a very long time. What is the difference between pop now and what is the difference between K-pop? What's like if we have Korean singers now singing in English, how's that different to pop? And if we have now our foreigners speaking in Korean, is that now K-pop? It's just been so confusing to me. But what elements of K-pop do you think have played a big role in the success of groups like Katseye? And what's the relation between the rise of these groups and the global expansion of K-pop, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really great question, Walter. I've been thinking the same thing too with so much overlap happening. But definitely one element that for me is on the top of the list that's played a major role is storytelling and branding. I think K-pop, over the many years that it's been popular, K-pop agencies have really been able to craft compelling group identities for their artists, right? And that makes international fans really deeply connected to their artists. And we're seeing that now with the global groups too, and not just the Korea-based groups. Something else, of course, that, speaks a little bit more to K-pop production is, I think, just the overall high quality of their productions, right? So there is now a very much signature kind of polished sound to a lot of K-pop. You've got the really intricate choreography as well, and, music video aesthetics. So I think that all really sets a high standard too. Going behind the scenes, I think training and discipline is something that maybe we think about slightly less, but is still really important too, because even these non-Korean groups will also undergo really rigorous training for vocals, dance, other kinds of performance. And it's really similar to Korean idols. And lastly, at the moment, I think something else that comes to mind too is fandom culture. The K-pop industry has done this amazing job at like building a really intense global fan engagement system, and that's from social media strategies to in-person fan-driven events. And I think, overall, the relationship between the rise of these groups and also the global expansion of K-pop is pretty clear. So as K-pop grows internationally, agencies are becoming really interested, increasingly, in working with non-Korean artists and groups to reach a wider audience, while still ensuring that these groups feel, K-pop authentic in their artistic output.
So let's go a little delve a little deeper into this issue, Claire. Major entertainment agencies are applying their K-pop methodologies on these multinational groups, including production methods and training systems that you just also touched upon. So how are these being applied effectively on the global stage?
Yeah, I think to the point of effectiveness, so I think the key is really in maintaining that high performance standard, right? That's something that K-pop is now internationally recognized for. But I think something that goes into, the implementation of it is agencies can't just focus on maintaining those standards at any cost, right? Like, by all means, I think they need to be really aware as they go into different markets that they need to adapt to cultural nuances, right? Even as they attempt to bring K-pop training systems to other parts of the world, for example. So this includes, how training is delivered, or, branding, styling, some of the more forward-facing kinds of content strategies. So far, I think, immediately companies that come to mind who have been really successful with this are HYBE and JYP. I think they've done a really good job with setting up their global training academies and audition programs to scout and develop talent and also spread the word, right, through broadcasting some of these programs on TV too. And yeah, they're using the same kinds of techniques that have made traditional K-pop idols successful too.
I feel like you've touched upon this already, but I just want to know if you could expand more. Are there any challenges, though, in applying Korean systems to groups that have members from such diverse cultural backgrounds?
Yeah, definitely, Walter. One major challenge, I think, if we consider the concept of K-pop localization itself, it's the cultural adaptation part. So, going back to what we've talked about, for training, not every market embraces the idea of this really intense training system that the K-pop idols undergo. So that's definitely one thing that comes to mind. Additionally, I do also think that language is a legitimate barrier that can pop up, right? Because that can create hurdles between members for communication, or even producers, fans as well. That can be something too. And I think another issue as well is the idea of balancing authenticity with K-pop influence, right? Because fans in different countries have had experiences with their own local music scenes, so they have an understanding of that. And I think they still want to see representation of their own cultures while also experiencing the signature K-pop style. So fans will probably appreciate it when groups retain elements of their cultural identity, but finding that middle ground is so crucial so that they still feel like it's K-pop.
I definitely agree with you there. And what are the most important things to consider in K-pop localization, do you think?
Yeah, I think, this is something I've considered a lot because it's such a difficult question to answer since there are so many factors that come into play. But to me, I think one of the most important ones is that cultural sensitivity. So while K-pop methodologies have been really effective in Korea, and we've seen how many groups and artists have come out of a lot of Korean systems, I think they do need to be really thoughtfully customized and not just copied off the bat while everyone is excited about expanding, since what works in one country or market doesn't always work in another. But on the note of what works with specific markets, I do think also that successful engagement with fans is really important too, especially considering that as K-pop expands, the diverse backgrounds of fans also expands too. So for these localized K-pop groups, they're not just going to have Korean fans, but they're also going to have their local fans and even fans beyond their main local audiences. So that's like a ton of people with, how social media can reach many listeners now. So it's really important to make genuine connections with all of these fans rather than connections that feel a little bit forced or awkward. And that's really difficult.
Yes, I guess it's not very an easy task to have so many groups to cater to when you are a K-pop group, but having so many multinational members there. So with that, I can imagine there are some challenges ahead. So what are your thoughts, Claire, on the further expansion of K-localization, or maybe we should also call it K-glocalization? So what challenges can you think of that may lie ahead in the next years?
Yeah, I think I might need to borrow that term for you, so localization. But yeah, I think, with the expansion of this type of K-pop localization, I think it's probably going to include a lot more collaborations between K-pop agencies and global music labels, which we've already seen quite a lot of. But that's going to help, I think, push a lot of these region-specific groups forward. But going back to what you mentioned about challenges, I do think we talked a little bit just now about how this seems like a trend, and I think a big challenge will be sustainability, right? So to make sure that these groups are not just successful in the short term because they're exciting, but also that they have a long-term appeal. So I'm really curious to see what things will look like down in the road, in a few years from now. And I also think that maintaining K-pop's unique identity while diversifying its reach could be a challenge, but it's really important to consider. I think if it's done right, then this could lead to even more kinds of globalized music industries with K-pop really as a phenomenon at the forefront, which is very exciting, I think. And it'll be enriching for a lot of audiences too.
All right. Thank you very much, Claire, for your insights today. I think many of your answers did answer many of our questions that Walter also had before.
Yeah.
And hope to talk to you again soon on any other interesting K-pop issues.
Thank you, Claire.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.